Hey, what's up, guys? I just got done building a couple decks on the back of the house here just before the snow came. Snow makes it look nice and pretty, but I actually recorded this step by step, and if you guys are interested, keep watching. I'll give you a bunch of pro tips on things like keeping your screws perfectly straight down the joist, making your cuts really nice and clean. But the number one thing that I see people do is not putting their screws in a perfectly straight line when you're doing a deck and the screw heads are exposed. Some people will go through and build a very clean deck, nice cuts, everything looks great, and then when you look at the lines of screws down through there, they're forming a U shape instead of a perfectly straight line like this. Sorry, that one gets me. Take that extra little bit of time and get it right. That one little tip right there makes all the difference in the world between an okay deck and a perfect deck. And we're going for perfect here. Every single screw that I put in, I think about where it is going. You don't see the screws on the post side to side, back and forth. Everything is in a perfectly straight line. You also want to make sure you keep your screw heads flush to the top unless you plan on using Bondo or wood filler. If you sink it halfway through the board, then it looks like this after a couple years. Okay, so the first thing you have to determine is the height. You can see on this one, the bottom lap of the siding is just about an inch below the bottom of the door, which is perfect. If you have an outswinging door, it's code in most places that you have no more than 1 inch of drop because it's a fall hazard stepping out blindly. So just keep that in mind. If you have vinyl siding, all you have to do is get a utility knife. You can snap a line, or in this case, we're going right at the seam. There's a starter strip securing the bottom of it, which you can usually just yank off and then take a flat bar and reach up in there to pop the nails up at the top. You do want to make sure you get all of the nails because we are going to slide waterproofing up about 4 inches. To cut the outside vinyl corners, I use a brand new Sawzall blade. Make sure I get a clean cut on there. If anybody is wondering why it looks like I'm cutting the line about a 1/4 inch high right there, it's because the siding on the other side of the house that was already there is a 1/4 inch higher than on this side. So I actually had to cut an extra 1/4 inch all the way down this side to match up. So that got through most of it. And then just finish it off with some snips. Not gonna lie, these corners are a pain in the ass. Once you get everything out of the way, then you want to put a waterproofing membrane on. In this case, I'm using Ice Shield, but you can use bitchethane or even just building paper. If you're using building paper, make sure you are sliding up underneath the existing paper if there is any there. This stuff it's cold this day, so it was pretty easy to slide up in there, but it's gonna stick really good to that paper. And the main thing you're going for is try to get 3 or 4 inches up above the top of the deck. So when you have snow and ice, then it's going to cover that. And as you can tell, I'm really not concerned about the bottom. This is really just for the ledger area, which brings me to my next point, the ledger. The ledger is the board that fastens to the wall that your joist will attach to. So you want to measure down 1 5/8 on each end and snap a line through. Make sure that you're going from end to end when you snap a line so that it's in a perfectly straight line. Don't use a 6-foot level going up and down. And the 1 5/8 is because your 2x6 is 1.5 inches thick and you want a little bit of extra wiggle room to slide up under there. Here's a little tip for you. If you're working by yourself, you have a long board you need to hang, then you put in what the old timers call a dead man. I measured down 1 5/8 and I put a screw at the bottom of the 2x6. So now I can lift it up, set it on there, walk all the way to the end and start screwing from the end. You always want to screw from one end of the board to the other because they all have crowns in them, which is the amount of curve up and down on the board. So if you have 2 people, great. One person on the other end will work the board up and down as one person starts from one end. and goes all the way down. To fasten the ledger, I like to use 3/8 lag bolts. So first I'll just go through and I will put 4 or 5 screws in here to hold it up, because before I put the lags in, I want to lay out all of the joists at 16 on center, and then that way I make sure I'm not putting my lags right on top of where my joists are. You'd be surprised at how many experienced carpenters don't know how to actually lay out 16 on center. They will put their first mark at 16 and then set ahead 1.5 inches. You're actually supposed to go 15 1/4, 16 3/4. You go 3/4 each side so that the center of your joist or stud or whatever it is exactly on layout. That way, if you're putting a sheet of plywood on that's 4 feet wide, if you're flush to the outside corner, then it's going to be 4 foot to the center of your stud. And now that we're all laid out, I'm going to go through and put some 3/8 by 5-inch lags in, and I will stagger each one. On the ends, I'll make sure I have one on the top. The next one, they will be down on the bottom, and back and forth. Now we have to establish where we're going to put the outside corner post. So what I've done is just measured out. This deck is going to be 6 feet out, and then I just leveled straight down. I put a stake in the ground. Now we're going to run a string line just over the height of our bases here. A lot of times it's the same thing if you're pouring concrete. On this one, she just wanted the little concrete bases, but we'll put a stake, and it'll be adjustable a little bit to fine tune. So you don't have to be dead on with this. Just get it close, and we'll tune it in. Alright, I've got this stake established on this side. You can see how I've ran the string up just above the height of the block there. Now for this other side, I did the exact same thing. I measured out 6 feet and leveled down, and I put that stake in the ground there. So now I'm going to just pull the string through right where that stake is, and I'm able to establish my outside corner since it's 4 feet out past the edge of the house. Now hopefully your string's going to be really close, if not dead on perfect, but once you do get it established, then you want to get it dead on perfect. Measure out your 6 feet, and you can knock the stake back and forth a little to adjust as needed. And of course you want to do both sides of this. Take your time. This is going to determine how straight the face of your deck is. So take your time, get this part right. For this outside corner, I set up the string just the same way I did on the other side. Came out leveled down, got 47.5. So those two will come out here conjunct, and X marks the spot. From there, you want to put all your rest of them in. I've already cut that. I'll get to that in a second. But for this span, we have 22 foot 8 3/4 outside to outside. You want to divide that by 4 because you're putting 3 posts in, going for 6 feet on this design roughly. So 3 posts, actually you divide the number by 4 because it's 4 empty spaces in between. So you always add up a number when you're dividing. So 22 foot 8 3/4 divided by 4 spaces is 5 foot 8 3/16. Now that's outside to center of this one. Then it will be center to center to center to outside. So you can rewind if you need to wrap your head around all of that, but I hope you understand how really real simple, the same way I did the string line coming this way and then that, and I figured out my spacing, and you just set everything up along there. And now you're ready to move on to your 4x4s. So I've already cut and notched this one in. We will get the height on the other side out there and then run another string through. Okay, to square this up, we're going to use the Pythagoras theorem. It's real simple. Pick any corner, but make sure if you're going to use this that you draw both ways off of this edge. So we're going to go 3 feet this way, 4 feet that way, and then it's 5 feet to square up across the diagonal. You can use any division of that. You can use 6, 8, 10, so on up the scale. You can't really tell from the shot here, but what I'm doing is I'm measuring for that 5 foot mark, and I'm using my knee to push the board over. As soon as you get it to your 5 foot mark, reach down and grab the brace and kind of clamp it together with your hand. Then you put a screw in it and it's secure. Then I always like to double check that the screw is actually holding it right where I want it before I continue building. We've already established where the outside corner is going to sit, so to get the height, you simply level out from your ledger. It's already established as well, and it's good to put a drop going away from the house so you don't get ice build up and everything. So when ice is melting, it will melt away from the house. On this, I used a 1/4 inch per foot drop, so 4 feet out, 1/4 inch per foot, that's 1 inch of drop overall. You do the exact same thing on the other side, then you've established your height, and then you're going to run a new string line so that you have a perfectly straight line all the way through. Now, I notched all these to match the other deck that halfway through the project she had me rip out and completely redo anyway. You don't necessarily have to notch out for these to sit in. You can just use through bolts, make sure they're galvanized for exterior use, but they will hold just fine. I didn't actually film this part, but to get that first post in the center, that was using the string line. I put up the 2 outside rim boards, and then I just marked the post in place to get the right notch. Then you want to double up the exterior rim boards. The ledger on the wall is fine because it's got the lags. It's holding, the wall's holding it, but on the exterior, you want to double up just the side where your joists are going to run into it. Then lay it all out 16 on center, just like your ledger was. If you've made it this far, you are on the home stretch. If you've done everything right, then when you measure the joists on one side and the other, it's all the exact same measurement. So you go through and you cut them all the same and then start installing them. If you see that 2x4 that I attached to the bottom of the ledger, that's to hold one side so I can set it on there and then screw the other side on first. When you're installing the joist, you want to make sure that the tops are flush. You don't worry about the bottoms. There may be a little difference in the thickness of boards. You're only going for the top flush, and it is best to install the joist first and the hanger after. Some people try to install the hanger first, but if there is an 1/8 inch difference in the material, then it's going to show. So flush the top, tack the board on, then put your hangers on. It'll come out right every time. And now you're all framed up. The only thing left to do is your decking. So this one was an L shape, so you just repeat the process right around the corner. If you guys have figured out how to get this far, I'm sure you can handle that much. You can draw your 16 on center from the wall or from that doubler beam that I put in there. I put that in because the 2 joists there are going to hold more weight on that beam. At this part of the project, they had me rip the other deck apart and do new decking on top. So I didn't actually film the beginning of me running this decking, but you just start from the outside and you notch around your posts. And then I just use a pencil to get that 1/4 inch space. You definitely want a space on there so that the water will run through. Your wood will last a lot longer. I've seen a lot of people run the wood just tight as can be because it has the pressure treated, has moisture in it, and it will shrink, but it shrinks pretty minimally on the width part of things. So just use a pencil, That way, especially when it comes to snow and ice, you get good drainage off your deck and it's not standing water all the time. When I'm setting these decking boards, I only put in as many screws are necessary to straighten the board. You want to make sure that those screws are put in dead center of your joist, but I screw everything off at the end with a string line so that the screws are in a really nice straight line and it looks pretty. And if you did put your initial set screws in the right spot, it will look like this when you run your your string line. And once again, when you're setting your screw heads, put them just below flush so that they're not sticking up. You don't want to ram it halfway through the board. It just looks bad after a while. I'm putting this a little bit out of order. When you're running your decking boards, you don't want to cut each one square and hope that it comes out to be a straight line. You run all of them an inch or so long, then you either snap a line or take a level and draw a straight line and cut it all at once. If you try to cut each one individually square, it is not going to come out in a straight line whatsoever. So here I've just marked a 1/2 inch past the outside joist, the rim joist, and now we're just going to cut off. Well guys, I've already gone on almost 20 minutes, so I've just shown you everything you need to know to get the decking part of your deck built. I'll just do a separate video on the handrail and the stairs. The stairs are definitely worthy of their own video, but you know, handrails you want to take your time with, think about each and every screw, so we'll just cover that in another video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you learned something, and I will see you on the next one.